The day today, from the Prime Minister downwards, members in India's security establishment were mulling options. Options to retaliate against Pakistan for the grave provocation in Uri. Remember, this is the biggest attack on any military installation in 26 years. And the overriding sense in government is that this attack cannot go unpunished. Before we start our war game tonight, what I want to do is take you through the thinking within the government. Gaurav Sawant files this story.
Enough is enough. A phrase you hear every time India is plagued by Pakistani terrorists. But could that actually be true this time? Has the Prime Minister lost his patience now? Has Narendra Modi truly decided that enough is enough? While media organizations speculate on how India should respond, India Today gets you the solid facts. A 4-point inside view of Prime Minister Modi's actual thought process from top sources in the security establishment. Point 1, the first confirmation, is that India will mount punitive strikes on Pakistan. The details are necessarily classified and sensitive, but it is clear that the government won't let Uri be another 26/11 or Pathankot.
ये एक एक्शन है, एक एक्ट ऑफ वॉर है पाकिस्तान का, और हमारा रवैया वैसे ही होना चाहिए जैसे लड़ाई में है.
Point number 2, the National Investigation Agency is investigating the Uri attack, but India will not supply Pakistan with evidence dossiers. India Today can confirm dossier diplomacy is off the table. Point number 3, for long India has dilly-dallied on taking firm military action on Pak-sponsored terror training camps in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The Modi government's current thought process involves a definite element involving the destruction of these ISI-funded camps. And finally, point number 4, India will set the ball rolling to formally designate Pakistan a terror state, both nationally as well as on a global forum through the United Nations. If all-out war with Pakistan is necessarily unthinkable, the inside track that India Today has accessed of the Modi government's thought process shows that its Pakistan policy has changed in just a matter of hours and is going to be exponentially more aggressive, both diplomatically as well as on the border. The question now is, will that thought be translated into action? In New Delhi, Shiv Arur for India Today.
Nawaz Sharif, the Pakistani Prime Minister, spoke out, put out a statement saying that India was being premature in blaming Pakistan. But you don't need to look much beyond the Uri Army Brigade camp to know that the evidence against Pakistan is indisputable. Here's the story.
Exclusive images from the Uri attack site that nail Islamabad. Among the recoveries made by security forces, war-like stores bearing Made in Pakistan markings. Medicines, candies, packaged food supplies, 4 AK-47 rifles, under-barrel grenade launchers, grenades that set oil reserves on fire, ammunitions and magazines. Also recovered a map with markings in the Pashtun language revealing the detailed terror plan.
A detailed analysis of the attack that took place on this camp here in Uri suggests how those who carried out this assault were very well planned. They knew the exact moment, perhaps the moment where was the weakest in terms of the guard in this camp, also had access to information about a changeover of troops taking place between one unit to another.
The total recoveries during this operation, some of which I had mentioned yesterday, include 4 AK rifles, 4 under-barrel grenade launchers, 39 under-barrel grenade launcher grenades, 5 hand grenades, 2 radio sets, ICOM, global positioning systems, 2 map sheets, 2 matrix sheets. These are the sheets that they use when they move from one place to the other as guidance points. And in addition to this, there was large quantity of food and medicine packets having markings of Pakistan.
All 4 Jaish terrorists, neutralized by the security forces, sported combat fatigues and closely cropped haircuts. A tactic to confuse, triggering a delayed response.
This is a Jaish-e-Mohammed militants supported by Pakistan Army.
India is preparing yet another strike on Pak to hand over the terror proof to Pakistan.
जो कदम उठाएंगे वो देख करके उठाएंगे सब कुछ में को ध्यान में रखते हुए इसलिए इसको ज्यादा बयानबाजी करना इस वक्त ठीक नहीं है.
Pakistan can continue to deny every proof, but it's payback time.
जो हमारा डिफेंसिव माइंडसेट है, जो डिफेंसिव एटीट्यूड है, उसको बदली करना होगा. इजराइल की तरफ हमको ऑफेंसिव बनना पड़ेगा. हर बारी पाकिस्तान इस माफी की कोई कार्रवाई करता है तो हमको उसके ऊपर बहुत बड़ी कीमत रखनी होगी.
Pak doesn't understand diplomacy, the eyesight protection enjoyed by Jaish chief Masood Azhar. He bleeds India to earn Pak patronage as he operates out of his heavily guarded base in Kot Bahawalpur in Punjab and stages anti-India rallies despite international sanctions. With Gaurav Sawant, Smita Sharma, Shujaul Haq, Bureau Report, India Today.
So the evidence against Pakistan is indisputable. But what are India's options? And remember, as I said at the start of the show, it's not as if any retaliation from India will lead to war. There are multiple options that India has. Here are those options, and in a moment from now, I'll be joined by guests with whom we will discuss each of these options. Let me take you through options one by one. Here is number one option, the most likely option, also the easiest to press into service. Indian Army is asked to resort to heavy firing along the line of control and the international boundary. Several Pakistani posts are pummeled, especially those posts from which infiltration usually takes place into India. So the pretext is that these are the posts from which infiltration takes place. The Indian Army is asked to raise those posts to the ground through artillery and mortar fire. What is the strength of this option? The strength is that it conveys a message to the Pakistani army, it conveys displeasure, and to the people at large, it shows that the government is not just sitting by, it's actually going out and acting, because you've got images of mortar shells exploding, bunkers being broken, so that image also goes out. But this option also has a negative. The negative is that this has been tried earlier. This was tried before 2003 when the ceasefire came into effect. It's also been tried during past terror attacks, even when the Modi government came into power. So therefore, it's not an option that hasn't been tried. It doesn't lead to deterrence. It does create problems for Pakistan in the immediate run, but it doesn't lead to deterrence, and therefore it's not the best option. Option number two, and this is something that's being looked at as well: engage local militia to take down most wanted terrorists like Hafiz Saeed, Sayyid Salahuddin, Masood Azhar. Hire local Baluch militia, or there's so many guns for hire in Pakistan, Afghanistan. Hire them, ask them to go in and take these masterminds down. The strength is that there is a lot of mercenaries who are available, very cheap for hire. There's a high level of plausible deniability. You can turn around and say, we didn't do it. The flip side though to this, and that's the weakness of option number two, is that such an operation can go horribly wrong, because remember, these mercenaries are not disciplined, loyal soldiers like the army. If they get caught, they could, for example, turn around and say that they've been paid by India. You don't know how this will end up. So there is that problem with this option. Let me now look at option three. This is an option that's recently been introduced to the Indian Army. You can send remote control drones across into Pakistan, controlled from forward bases. They go into places, they can either pummel terrorist camps in Pakistan, occupied Kashmir, or these drones can actually take down HVTs, high value targets. A terrorist again like Hafiz Saeed, the Dawood Ibrahim, those terrorists can be taken down. The advantage is that you don't need to send army personnel, so you don't need to put boots on the ground, you don't need to go across the LOC yourself. These automatic drones can do it, and there is plausible deniability. The flip side though to this, because plausible deniability, because you can send drones with Chinese markings, for example, on them. The flip side to this though is that it requires very precise intelligence inputs. The drone, for example, could get shot down, and that would give Pakistan what military parlance is called a smoking gun. Let's now look at option number 4. This is an option that several experts like Brahma Chalani, for example, have been advocating very strongly, which is essentially to renege on the commitments made under the Indus Water River Treaty. Remember, this is one of the most skewed water treaties in the view of many Indian analysts who believe that no upper water state gives as much of the river waters, most of these flowing through Kashmir into Pakistan, to the lower state. Remember, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu have been facing a problem. We've seen how that's played out over the last several days. So this again is an option. Go back on the commitment. The advantage of this is that this can really hurt Pakistan. Remember, Pakistan is scarce when it comes to natural water resources. It is heavily dependent on the water that comes as part of the Indus Water Treaty. And therefore, if you were to do this, it would hurt Pakistan very hard. The weakness of this option is that you're essentially conveying a message to the world that India can't keep its commitment made during an international treaty, and therefore that doesn't make Prime Minister Modi look good internationally, because remember, this is an international treaty. Pakistan has challenged us internationally in the last several years on certain aspects. When we were building 3 dams, for example, run-of-the-river dams along the river Kishanganga, they've challenged us. So this is another problem. Let's now come to option number 5. Now this is what people usually assume India's option is: surgical strikes. Send fighter aircraft like the Mirage 2000, the Jaguars, the MiG-29 or the Sukhoi 30 across the line of control, bomb visible targets like terror camps in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. You can't go into civilian areas like Lahore, which is where Hafiz Saeed is likely to be, or like Karachi, which is where Dawood Ibrahim is likely to be, but in sparsely populated areas along POK, you can go in, bomb terror infrastructure. The advantage of this option is that it sends a big message to the Indian community, to the Pakistani community and army, and to the global community that you dare not mess with India. If you do, we will hit back, and we will hit back hard. The problem though is that Pakistan has something called the theory of escalation, which is essentially, when does the nuclear threshold get crossed? And amongst the 4 points they have in the theory of nuclear escalation, one of their strategies is, if the line of control is to be crossed by an Indian fighter aircraft, it would be considered a red threshold, and therefore this could invite nuclear retaliation from Pakistan. Remember, several Pakistani army generals have been saying this publicly. Some went to the United States and said it in Washington. So this message has been sent that any surgical strike will lead to retaliation, and therefore this is the problem with this option. Let's now come to option number 6. In this option, you could potentially send bad action teams of India's special forces into Pakistan occupied Kashmir and neutralize high value targets. Now you may not end up reaching Lahore. You could potentially also reach Lahore, but you can definitely go into POK very quickly, achieve your targets. For example, go after the people who were responsible for sneaking these terrorists into Uri. We know who they are. They could be taken down, and our special forces could come back very quietly, stealthily. This is what they're trained for, and they're amongst the best in the world. Remember, whenever there are international games where you've got special forces commandos from different countries competing, India's special forces commandos very often win. They are amongst the best in the world. Allow them to go out and prove their mettle. The flip side to this option is that if, God forbid, this operation were to go slightly wrong and any of our commandos were to get injured or killed, then it could get very embarrassing. So there are strengths and weaknesses to each of the options that I've laid out on the newsroom this evening, and now I want some experts to talk about these options and to take us through what is realistically possible. Remember, as I said at the start of the show, retaliation doesn't necessarily mean that there will be nuclear war. It doesn't mean that there will be an all-out escalation. There are options. Those options need to be looked at. Those options need to be pressed into action. Remember, India cannot sit back and say our doctrine is of strategic restraint. Strategic restraint is no doctrine. It is out and out cowardice. I want to go across now to our guests who are joining us on this broadcast. I want to begin by introducing Rana Banerjee. Rana Banerjee is one of India's foremost experts on Pakistan. He's been with the research and analysis wings, considered in salute in community as one of the sharpest minds on Pakistan. General G.D. Bakshi is joining us on this broadcast as well. He served in Kashmir. Also with us is Siddharth Nath Singh. He was at a briefing where the defense minister and others briefed on where the government stands. Remember, we're not suggesting any one of these options, because that ultimately, as the DGMO said, is something the government will do at a time and place of its choosing. But what we are bringing into the public imagination is the idea that there are options that India has, options that countries like China and Israel wouldn't think twice before putting into service, options that India needs to consider. General G.D. Bakshi, I want to come across to you first, because soon after 26/11, there were meetings very similar to the meetings that have been happening yesterday and today. Manmohan Singh was in charge at the time. He evaluated the options, came to the conclusion that none of them could be considered safe, and therefore none of those options were carried out. Do you believe that the same will happen this time? And I took our viewers through 6 different options. Which of those, General Bakshi, in your experience and with your expertise, do you believe is best suited for the kind of provocation that India faces just now?
Rahul, thank you for highlighting these options short of war, because the misperception in this country is that you take one step across the line of control or the international border and pop goes the weasel, the nuclear bombs will start flying. We have self-deterred ourselves shamelessly, because by taking counsel of these irrational, misplaced fears. If you study the Pakistani doctrine as enunciated by General Kidwai, he talks when a large part of Pakistan is overrun, when a large part of the Pakistani army and air force are destroyed or threatened, and he has laid down 4 conditionalities which leave a lot of scope for limited war, for limited conventional action. Out of the 4 options that, out of the 6 options that you have spelt out, may I suggest that it is the attack pinpoint precision airstrikes on terrorist training camps, high value targets, that is the best from the military point of view.
Because put that question to Rana Banerjee, because the flip side of the option that General G.D. Bakshi is recommending, Mr. Banerjee, is the fact that there are no high value targets in POK. It's not as if Hafiz Saeed, sometimes he does come to POK, but most often he's in Lahore at the Jamatul Dawa headquarters. So you've got some tents, you've got some huts, you've got some temporary construction where the training is meted out to Lashkar and his cadre. Even if you go and blow them up, so what? You'll get a few casualties, but very quickly that terror infrastructure can be re-established. So how does that serve our purpose? I've taken our viewers through 6 separate options. Which of those, Mr. Banerjee, do you believe is best suited given the provocation we face?
See, the pinpointed action on camps, the location of the camps is not very accurately known. Plus, they may be shifting very often. So, it is liable for, collateral damage also, and not achieve the results that have been desired. Also, the high value targets. I mean, sometimes Salahuddin goes to Muzaffarabad, but he is highly protected. And for any such strike to be successful, we need inside sources who can very accurately and in time and in space provide information which can then be acted upon through drones. But we don't have those high capacity drones, the Predator or such like, which the Americans have used to neutralize such high value targets in Fatah, or even the Taliban leader, Afghan Taliban leader Mullah Mansoor. So we need to have better equipment to be able to do these things. In option number 4,
ceteris paribus, the way things are, even with Mr. Banerjee, you got a good point that we haven't yet acquired Predator-style drones which can go in deep into enemy terrain, execute very highly precise targets. But we have drones, and those drones can be put to some use. Is that enough? And you're also taking our viewers through your thoughts on option number 5 and 6, which is surgical strikes and sending special forces, bad action teams. And those drones can be put to some use. Is that enough? And you're also taking our viewers through your thoughts on option number 5.
No, I was talking of option number 4. You mentioned the Indus Waters Treaty.
Yes.
Now, even without repudiating the treaty, we have the possibility of, using the three the lower riparian rivers, and that is the Beas, Satluj, and the Ravi, and there the water flows can be regulated by us in a better manner to, create problems for Pakistan. Even when we don't do anything, they accuse us of, abating natural disasters. So, a more intelligent use of the waters as an upper riparian state without repudiating the treaty is possible to do.
That's interesting. I want to bring in some thoughts also from Siddharth Singh of the BJP, because the problem and the concern that a lot of people have, Siddharth, is these options have been discussed in the past. Manmohan Singh had a day-long presentation, all the army chiefs were there, the IB chief, the RAW chief, the NSA, they heard that and nothing happened. We've seen the attack in Gurdaspur, we've seen the attack in Pathankot, nothing happened. Will we hit back in some form or the other, or will this so-called doctrine of strategic restraint that neither Modi nor Ajit Doval believe in, will that be followed through further?
Well, I think the way I would be looking at it is that whatever the response has to be given militarily, whether it is strategic, whether it is surgical, there are a number of questions which will come into it. But I don't think that is where the government would be getting. Government has to come politically, government has to come diplomatically to stand with our armed forces. Let them decide what they wish to do, and that's exactly what the DGMO has said. So I won't go on a hype, but I think as far as the government is concerned, as far as the government responses, there is a sense of determination, sense of a message that Pakistan must get, that enough is enough. So keeping those things in mind, and also keeping, Rahul, that we are not a rogue state. We are not a rogue like a country like Pakistan. We are a responsible state, and we have built up an international relationship. So our response will be very calibrated, will be keeping all these things in mind, but certainly it will be something which will inflict pain on a sustainable basis, and will make Pakistan to cost for what they are doing.
That's a good start, Siddharth. That's a good start, because India is now talking about pain. It's talking about ensuring that Pakistan has to pay back, because remember, for the longest time we've suffered in silence. We may have mourned about it, but we've done nothing. And that, for a country of 1.2 billion people with one of the finest armies in the world, is not okay. I'm very quickly going to slip into a break. When we come back, we have a lot more to talk about with Siddharth Singh, Rana Banerjee and General G.D. Bakshi. We'll also be looking at the martyrs and their families, because remember, each of those relatives who've lost their near and dear ones are clamoring that there be a response. The government can decide what response it should be. That's something that Ajit Doval, the army chief, can sit and work together and decide what is best. But there must be a response, because we cannot be okay with getting hit again and again and not hitting back. We'll come outside of a 3-minute break. Stay with us. Overriding sentiment across the country is not retaliating cannot be an option, and we're looking at what the realistic possibilities are. Siddharth Singh of the BJP, Rana Banerjee from the RAW, and General G.D. Bakshi, former Indian Army General, is with us on this broadcast. Before I go back to our guests, I want to take you through the reactions from the family members of those who were killed in Uri. Remember, each one of the voices that you're hearing next, they're all saying the same thing. There must be a response. Not responding cannot be an option. Listen to this.
बदला लेना चाहिए, जिस तरह हमारे आदमी को मारे उसी तरह वहाँ भी बदला लेना चाहिए। इन लोग के हाथ खोल के चलिए, ये लोग का भी अधिकार है लड़ने का। हाँ, भारत सरकार हाथ बंद करके रखे हैं इन लोग।
Families of the braves who perished in Uri, pressing the Modi Sarkar to seek revenge, to make Pakistan pay for every drop of blood lost. A clamour to unshackle our soldiers. Martyr Nayak Sunil Kumar Vidyarthi's daughter joins her mother to hoist high a tough anti-Pakistan slogan.
जैसे कि उन लोग हम लोग के देश पर अटैक करते हैं अचानक, वैसे हम लोग को भी करना चाहिए, तभी पाकिस्तान सुधरेगा। IIT ज्वाइन करना चाहती थी, दिल्ली IIT, लेकिन अब पता नहीं हो पाएगा।
22-year-old Gangadhar Dolui, the sole breadwinner of his family, has left behind an entire village in Howrah in tears. West Bengal, Maharashtra, Bihar, Jharkhand, Jammu. India is seething. There's rage simmering in every heart for India's lost sons. Martyr Havildar Ravi Pal is now just a memory in these pictures. These eyes cannot hope to see him smile at her again.
मैं नेताओं से चाहता हूं कि वो अदले का बदला लेते रहें।
India salutes its brave heroes and the sacrifice of their families, but wreaths cannot be the only tribute anymore. Probe committees are not the real answers. Dossier diplomacy needs to be off the table. They defended India till their last breath. Now their families are screaming to be heard, seeking retribution, a befitting reply, and an end to the mindless butchering of our Jawans by the enemy. Bureau Report, India Today.
So I want to go back now to Rana Banerjee, Siddharth Nath Singh and General G.D. Bakshi. Every single one of those relatives clamoring for a response. One of the things, Mr. Banerjee, that's being said by those who urge that there be no response is that even though we're saying that there will not be a nuclear escalation, they're saying that you don't know about the jihadi generals in Pakistan, you don't know what they will do. So you may act assuming that there will be no response. Pakistan, there have been some experts as part of some track 2 dialogue who've said going back on the Indus Water Treaty, that by itself is an act of war. So they're saying you can act, but you don't know how they'll react. Is that also something that will need to be factored into India's decision-making matrix?
Well, you know, their threat about use of tactical nuclear weapons, I would agree to a certain extent with General Bakshi that it is a bit of bluff and rhetoric, and there are many problems which they have in implementing the tactical nuclear weapon strikes. And recently they have also come under a lot of pressure from the United States and other powers who want to take a view on Pakistan's request to be admitted to the the SPG. So they have a new policy of what they call full spectrum deterrence, which is not totally acceptable to the Western powers. So whether the threat to use TNW is there or not, there are many a slip between the cup and the lip in that regard.
There's a lot of bluff in this. Talking about using a nuclear weapon is much easier than actually going about doing so. And do you think, General Bakshi, the time has come, as Rana Banerjee also argues, to call that bluff? Because you keep, we had the Pakistani defense minister day before Uri say, you dare mess with us, we'll use a nuclear weapon on you. They keep using this threat. Has the time come to call that bluff, or do you think that's a dangerous game of poker to be playing?
The time has absolutely come, Rahul, to call that bluff. The Pakistani military commanders are very rational actors. They have huge bungalows, they have Mercedes, and they have one hell of a lot to lose. And if you think that they are going to use nuclear weapons in the full knowledge that they will get it back in kind with interest, and that the Pakistani Punjab would be destroyed forever, not a grain of rice or wheat will grow there for the next 800 years. I don't think they are messing with that in a hurry. 3 months we fought the Kargil war, there was not a single nuke on Delhi. Rahul, there is one point that I must, emphasize, and that is the point that it will be a game of action, reaction. You will entrain an escalator, an escalation ladder, the moment we take action across. We should be prepared for that, and that is why I have been strongly advocating that please commence with air power. We have the precision to strike pinpoint targets. I am not suggesting that you go in for a camel and a butt end of a camel and a tent. I am suggesting that you go in for very high value targets. We know where they are,
Siddharth saying,
we know where
how
their
much
headquarters are.
of an effort will be made to reach out to the international community? We've seen Russia already announce that they are cancelling a military exercise with Pakistan inside POK. How much of an effort will be made to isolate Pakistan on the international stage, Siddharth?
Well, just quickly to answer your previous question to other guests, I think no risk, no gain. So we need to take risk for gaining certain strength for India on giving back a message to Pakistan. Now, coming on your question to me, I think we have succeeded diplomatically. We have managed. We have seen the Russian ambassador coming on various channels and telling that they will not be participating with the Pakistan army in POK. We have also seen how Afghanistan recently has responded, Mr. President Ghani. We have seen how Iran has responded. We have seen how Bangladesh is responding. So there is diplomatically we have moved in the right direction. We know today that Canada and France, UK, USA, they all have come in support of India. So I think, barring China, we have played our cards well. I think we need to intensify our diplomatic efforts. At the same time, we also need to give a message to various countries who are dealing with Pakistan commercially. And at the same time, they're looking at Indian market because we are the fastest growing nation. So we can control
absolutely,
bleed Pakistan commercially and also diplomatically. So there are other options also, as you said in the beginning, apart from what you had listed.
Absolutely. There are economic levers as well that India can try and leverage. Remember, you have to have the imagination. Our forces have the might, they have the precision, they have the ability to go out and do it. What's been lacking so far is political will. That is what has been lacking so far. Whether that will is forthcoming on this occasion or not, we don't know just yet. But you heard what Siddharth said, no risk, no gain. You also heard what Ram Madhav said, that they take out a tooth, we'll take out a jaw. They're talking about action. What action there will be, we will find out soon. Siddharth Singh, Rana Banerjee, GD Bakshi for joining me on the newsroom tonight. Thank you very much.